Hey, this is Jonty from Kepler, and I have with me today Kyle, who's a performance assistant from Aro Digital, a digital marketing agency based out of Wellington, New Zealand. And we're super excited to announce the release of a little tool in collaboration with Kepler and Aro, which is the digital advertising industry benchmarks for New Zealand. And so, what we've kind of wanted to do is effectively provide a dashboard that runs through all the different key metrics, such as CPMs, that's cost per thousand impressions, average CPC, which is average cost per click, and CTR, which is the click-through rate. And what we wanted to do is provide a bit of a benchmarking dashboard or a tool for any business or marketer in New Zealand to kind of use and gauge and get a sense of where their campaigns sit in terms of some of these key metrics. Because often all this data is actually, particularly in New Zealand, is quite hard to come by. So what we wanted to do is kind of build a tool that you can use to kind of plug into your forecasting. You can use to kind of compare your campaigns. And then you can also do that by a number of things. We're just going to walk through the dashboard in terms of the features and functionality. And then we're going to explore some key trends and then some other ways you can kind of use this dashboard. So as you can see here, it's a real simple flow where you can kind of choose between industry. So we've actually broken down the dashboard by industry. So you can go in and you can filter, say, e-commerce if you're a retailer and you just want to look at the metrics and the benchmarks by retail. You can go in and do that, and the whole dashboard will effectively filter to that as well. You can also break it down by platform, so that's Google or Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, and then also by channels. This is really good. So it allows you to really just dive in and compare specific channels. So if you wanted to compare, search versus Facebook or Facebook versus Instagram or whatever it is, you can do that here as well, and the dashboard will actually filter. So in terms of how this is set up, we've got kind of two different data sets here that we're working with. So we're looking at, say the click-through rate this month versus the same month the year prior. So we want to kind of factor in seasonality and look at the difference and look at the change over a year on year for both Google and Meta. And then to the right-hand side, we've got the whole, the average click-through rate for the whole year versus the year prior, and then kind of just working out the difference. So it has been an increase on average in terms of click-through rate or a decrease on average in click-through rate. So again, you can take these metrics and compare them to the campaigns that you're running to kind of give you a gauge of, are you outperforming or underperforming a benchmark CTR. So, and as you can see down here, we've also got this for CPM, so cost per thousand impressions, and average CPC as well. So hopefully this gives you a nice holistic overview of some of these key metrics that you can kind of compare with their own campaigns. And Kyle, you want to dive into some of these charts here?
Yeah, absolutely. So once this loads, yeah, there we go. So essentially what this is it's pretty much the exact same thing as the previous page, except instead of looking at over a time period, we're looking at it over industries. So this is really good for trying to locate, comparison metrics in regards to cost per thousand impressions and cost per click. And same story as the last page as well. You can also filter this by industry, platform, or channel. And I think it's quite important to mention that you can do these in conjunction with each other. So you can select a specific industry as well as a special platform or a special channel. So, yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. And so let's just kind of dive into some of the insights and trends that we've found. So, with this dashboard, because we've plotted out, we've got like 2 years, worth of data. It allows us to kind of plot out some seasonality as well. We've been able to kind of identify some key insights and trends, and this is going to be mentioned on our blog post on the website. But we can kind of run through some of those key trends. So, what we've noticed is, the Meta in terms of the cost to advertise on Meta has increased by 10% year on year. And that isn't a huge increase that we anticipated, considering that Meta, for the first time ever in the previous quarter, actually had a reduction in monthly active users. So what we were typically looking to see was the because there's less of an audience pool and potentially less users to advertise for, that would actually make it more expensive from a CPM, from a CPM front to get in front of people. However, we didn't really see that, we haven't really seen a dramatic increase. And then in terms of that shift in spend as well, we've kind of seen potentially a larger shift in spend going towards Instagram, which is quite interesting. And then in terms of the next trend, what you'll typically notice is that it's a lot more expensive. So it's over 1.5 times more expensive to advertise in the lead up to Christmas. So that last quarter of the year, between that October to December period. So that means that your spend could be less effective during that period. However, naturally, if you are a retailer or selling a product or something like that, it could be worth the spending that additional amount, the extra amount, to get in front of people at that time when their rate of purchasing is a lot higher because they're buying Christmas presents and all sorts of things. And typically we see higher conversion rates from people in the e-commerce space. So that would typically offset that increase in cost, but then you are still playing against bigger bigger advertisers who are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. Millions of dollars during that period. So if you are a retailer, potentially it's worth actually calibrating, consolidating, and reducing your marketing and advertising spend. Like if you're a SaaS or technology company, maybe you should be kind of limiting or reducing your budgets or focusing on the most effective channels during that time period, and then waiting to the new year. And then subsequently from that, the first quarter of 2021 and 2022 was the cheapest to advertise, across Meta, with the CPM, January 2021 sitting at $4.34, and in 2022 was sitting at around $6.35. So we know there's actually a bit of a come down period, as the Christmas period ends, in that January to March phase. What we typically see is an opportunity for small advertisers to maximize their budget and get in front of more people with their campaigns. On the flip side, if you are a retailer, e-commerce business, this is when we then typically see a drop in conversion rates because there's again that come down period. People have already made those purchases. They probably don't want to spend too much, spend too much money. And so in that case, it's probably look at adapting your marketing approach or marketing strategy in that first quarter. We see it across all retail and e-commerce businesses. And that's some of the kind of insights that we've got at a top level. Were there any other insights that you wanted to talk about, Carl?
Yeah, so what we've noticed is between 2021 and 2022, particularly for the social enterprise industry, we've seen the largest increase in cost per click out of any industry that we're recording with this tool. So it's quite interesting actually. The increase within the Google platform was a 296% increase with regards to CPC. And on Meta, there was an increase of 109%, which eventually averaged out to a 155% increase between both platforms. So it was quite interesting to see that what industries are increasing year by year. And something else we found was that the cost to advertise within the technology and education space has increased 20% year on year. So those were the two most expensive industries year on year. So really interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with that social enterprise. I guess industry is there's probably a lot more social enterprises out right now.
Yeah,
they're probably putting all sorts of platforms and companies and products and services, and potentially that's where we're kind of with that explosion within that industry in terms of number of businesses and looking to get out to the market. Potentially that could be a factor for that increase in advertising costs, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So and just to kind of finally kind of wrap everything up, we kind of wanted to talk, kind of give you three, I guess, options or ways to kind of use this dashboard. So the first one is that you can use these benchmarks to plan your advertising spend. So you might have a little forecasting tool. You might be looking to spend a certain amount in certain months or quarters. what you could do is kind of look at, if you don't have that historic data, or you haven't run campaigns, say you're looking to run campaigns in July, and you don't have July last year, you could potentially use this as a bit of a benchmark, to kind of plan your advertising spend, know what return, how many impressions and clicks, and what the cost is going to be for that month. You can also compare your existing performance with these benchmarks, which I think is going to be the most used, the biggest use case for this dashboard. So going in and comparing your CPM, well, how does it stack up, in this industry, and on this channel. And you can also use it to compare and explore other channels within the ad platforms that you may have typically strayed away from, or you weren't too sure of how they actually perform in terms of the CTR and the CPM. And again, a lot of these metrics are, there's a number of factors that go into, these different, into these metrics, such as, how unique and what to cut through in terms of your creative, what audiences you are applying. So we haven't necessarily factored it in. So, these are kind of more of a sense check, rather than, I wouldn't necessarily rely fully on these numbers. It's really just to kind of provide, a top level kind of indication of where you might sit as well. So yeah, still take these numbers with a grain of salt, but we think it's really useful. And then what's another reason?
Yeah, so this tool is really, really good for making really informed decisions on what platforms are going to be best suited for the product that you're wanting to be advertised. The level of granularity with these three drop downs at the top of the page, you can really select specialized channels, platforms, and industries. So a use case for something like this would be comparing Instagram and Facebook for your product. Typically we tend to see higher click-through rates on Instagram, but the cost per 1,000 impressions is a little bit higher on Facebook. It's just really interesting to see these different fluctuations and metrics across channels, platforms, and different industries. So it's quite interesting.
Cool, awesome. So that's it from us today, and we're really keen to get this out there, and get people using it, and we're keen to see how people are using it, and how much value it kind of adds their marketing planning and campaign planning, and really just want to get feedback on what are some other stuff that you want to see in here. What's some other metrics in terms of we want to see conversion rates across industry that could be useful. Top performing types of creative. There's all sorts of things that we can do and share. So really just want that feedback, and we'll look to build on this and continue to pull out insights and trends as we are going throughout the year. But yeah, it's a pleasure to have you chat.
Yeah,
and
thank you very much.
Yeah, sweet. Catch ya.
Cheers.